Hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody, in case you stepped away for the break or if you were sitting in for that fantastic session with Harlan and Len. I'm so glad that we could all be here today to listen to them share their knowledge. I would like to welcome Valerie Nicholson, Angela Kaida, and Becky Gormley for our next session. I guess I didn't introduce myself. My name is I'm part of the BC Support Unit Fraser Center team. So I'll keep it really quick, just so we can be within our time here, but please be mindful that the session is being recorded today. If you would like to ask a question anonymously, feel free to send it over to me in the chat and I can forward it on to the group. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our speakers from the Chivos Paw team, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Can everyone see that? I can't. Becky, if you can say yes.
Yes, looks beautiful.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the elders yesterday and today for the opening. And I honor the teachings from Len and Harlan and all those that have spoken. I thank you. And I'd like to welcome everyone to the Changing Tide, Indigenizing Re-Search with Indigenous women living with HIV to explore, understand, and support their health. I would like to acknowledge all the ancestral traditional territories, lands, and waters across Turtle Island, where we work, play, live, and especially learn from. I acknowledge the unceded ancestral traditional lands and waters of the Coast Salish. This is where I connect my mind, body, heart, and spirit, and from where I'm speaking from today. I honor the Tsleil-Waututh, the Squamish, and the Musqueam, and prayers up to all those that are holding space. We honor and respect the Kwantlen ancestral traditional lands and waters, where we gathered for Chivos Paw and connected our hearts, minds, bodies, and spirits to gather our knowledge. I would like us to take a moment to remember all those that have gone on before us. Your voices forever heard. We raise our hands to our funders, CIHR, the AHA Center, Simon Fraser University, and the BC Support Unit. Becky?
Thank you so much, Val, and good morning, everyone. My name is Becky, and I'm honored to be the research coordinator for Chivos Paw, and so happy to spend some time with you this morning. As we begin our presentation, I just wanted to briefly review a few housekeeping items and to let you know that we have a very interactive presentation planned today. So during the presentation, we will be asking you to share your thoughts, reflections, and responses to a few questions if you're comfortable. And you can put all of those reflections right into the chat box. So if you haven't had a chance to yet, please take a moment to find the chat just at the bottom of your screen. And please know that if you ever want to share your reflections anonymously, you can send them as a private message to me, Becky. And then just as a final reminder, please keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking and feel free to keep your video on or off. We will have time for questions and a discussion at the end of the presentation before Val officially closes us. So thank you so much, and I'll pass it back over to Val.
Thank you, Becky. There we go. Kwe, hello. Ok Chaladiha, which means welcome in my Mi'kmaq language. Ninda Luisi Valerie. Valerie is my GST name. And the name given to me 4 days after my birth was the one the Eagles watch over. I was gifted the name Nodi Wenda, which means wolf eyes, from my Dene family. And I've been gifted the name Auntie from the Torres Strait Islanders. I honor my partner now in the spirit world, James Raven from Frog Lake. I am Mi'kmaq, Haida, Roma, and UK Islander descent. I am a mother and a grandmother, and I live with HIV. Everyone belongs to a tribe, and this is our tribe. This is a quote gifted to us by Elder Sheila. Angela, can I pass it over to you for a bit of background?
Thanks, Val. And good morning, everybody. Thank you, Lynn and Harlan, for that amazing talk this morning. It's going to sit with me all day, all weekend, probably all year. But my role here in this morning is I wanted to give you a bit of background about the Chivos Paw study. So first, I think it's important for me to make sure that everybody here knows that women across Canada account for about 1/4 of all people living with HIV. And I think that the fact that HIV is so gendered is sometimes lost on our conversations. But second, it's important to know that 86% of females living with HIV in Canada are Indigenous, Black, or other women of color. And this is so different than what the epidemic looks like among men. For Indigenous women in particular, 31% of all women living with HIV in Canada are Indigenous. And so the experience of living with HIV itself also differs by gender. So compared with men, we know that women experience poorer HIV and health-related outcomes across the HIV care cascade, from diagnosis all the way through to survival. But despite the fact that we know these differences, as Harlan has already told us, we know about this, but we still haven't sufficiently integrated a methodology into our research that accounts for these differences and centers the people who most need to be centered in the research process. So we launched the Canadian HIV Women's Sexual and Reproductive Health Cohort Study, or Chivos, you know now why we need an acronym, in 2010. And what we did is we conducted the largest community-based cohort study, quantitative cohort study of women living with HIV in Canada. And we enrolled 1,422 women from BC, Ontario, and Quebec into the study and asked them to return for visits every 18 months. And it was important that we grounded the study in really important principles. Firstly, critical feminism. Right, that we recognize not only that men and women differ in their experiences, but among women, there are different priorities and experiences that deeply matter. We grounded ourselves in anti-oppression strategies. We are very grounded in social determinants of health alongside the GIPA and MIWA principles, greater and more meaningful involvement of people living with HIV in our research. And here in BC, we enrolled 356 women living with HIV, of whom 45% identified as Indigenous. And so we know we know about the horrific experiences of discrimination and stigma and racism that Indigenous women experience while they access healthcare. So the fact that Indigenous women living with HIV may have poorer outcomes cannot be decontextualized from our colonial origins, current traumas, and really structural racism that perpetuates across our government policies, education systems, healthcare systems. And so we determined that, yes, we needed to pursue research, but that it prioritized Indigenous women living with HIV in their safety, in their needs, and in their own priorities. And importantly, to ensure that it was strengths-based in its approach. And so we initiated Chivos Paw. And the PAW part of our acronym stands for Positive Aboriginal Women, which is a terminology that was gifted to us by Keisha Larkin, who was one of the first Indigenous women diagnosed with HIV in Canada. And Chivos Paw study aims to understand how Indigenous women living with HIV understand and experience their health through their own traditional ways of knowing. And so that really gives us the grounding of how we came to knowing that we needed to do research differently. And now I'm going to pass it back to Val to tell us how we actually did that.
Thank you, Angela. Oh, I forgot to. Honoring our Chivos Paw Tribe, we had 6 Indigenous wise women living with HIV from many different nations, all living on the Coast Salish unceded traditional ancestral lands, with researchers who practice allyship. We honor the voices of our tribe and the passions and dedication healthcare providers have given us and all those who have supported us on our journeys. We are much more than what can be learned in a book. This is the living experience. I'd like to introduce the guides of the tribe of Chivos Paw, myself, gatherer of wisdoms and history teller, Angela, who just spoke, the gatherer of wisdoms, Becky, our keeper of wisdoms, Elder Sheila, who is our protector and guide, and Debbie Cardinal, our gatherer of wisdoms and our facilitator. I would like to thank Elder Joan, Nilu, the Chivos team, the Springbrook staff, Shanoa, and to all of you for taking this journey with us. On this journey, we will be sharing our processes, ceremony, indigenizing our research, strength in art-based ways of doing, and how health is connected with nature. When I do PowerPoint presentations, I have all the words and add a picture or diagram. On this journey, the pictures came first, and the voices of our tribe, our ancestors. It easily flowed and guided this work to indigenize our research. This picture was taken 1 year prior to our Chivos Paw gathering on the same lands and in the very same place. The ancestors were showing me that the work I was to do involved water, as shown by the waves, and a woman rising out of the water. In this presentation, we invite you to focus on the photography and art as we speak and see that each picture has a story and a meaning. And to honor that Coast Salish medicines have been here since time immemorial. Water connects us all. Water is a living thing, a spiritual entity with life-giving forces. The first relationship that we have is that with our life giver. We come from water. We were in water approximately 8 to 10 months. Women are especially strong in spirit during their moon time as the moon cycles the waters. Water is one of the first medicines given to us by the Creator. Water is the lifeblood of Mother Earth. And just like the blood that runs through our veins, water runs through Mother Earth. Water is living. Water is sacred. Water is medicine. From the words of a wise woman, we choose to use wise women or community expert as they were so much more than a participant. I'm in love with the ocean. I feel renewed every time. I think it's because all of my ancestors are from the coast. It's just where I'm supposed to be. It's where all my blood memory is. Many nations across Turtle Island believe the earth to be their mother and the waters to be like the blood that runs in our veins. The oceans, streams, rivers, lakes, ponds, and seas provide life to everything on Mother Earth. And a teaching from my grandfather, new knowledge is old knowledge to new people. Today, we'll be sharing our process of our research. I start with a quote from a tribe member who shared, "Indigenous elders looked after me until I got better, and they taught me about the cedar." The process is a journey, and this is our journey. The teachings I received from Elder Sean is that we do not have ideas or concepts. They've already been put down by our ancestors for us to pick up when needed. These ideas and concepts have always been here, and when we are ready, we find them and we search for the answers that are also already here. And as we indigenize our work, we use the word research. What I picked up was a journey into healthcare and the relationship, if there was one, between traditional and Western medicines and how this is navigated. Many words and symbols came to me and were held on whiteboards. I went back to the old ways, and being from water and around water, the Salish seas, the water medicine wheel was seen. Our first form of communication was drawing on cave walls in the sand or in the dirt. When we didn't know someone else's dialect or language, we used pictures. Basing the work on the 7 sacred teachings of humility, courage, respect, love, wisdom, truth, and honesty, and using visual ways of doing, this kept our work in a good way. We came to our overarching question: how do Indigenous women living with HIV in the Coast Salish territories understand their health and well-being through traditional ways of knowing? We asked women to think about this complex question in several different ways. Throughout our gathering, we created 6 collective canvases, going through a series of questions that reflect on how women understand experience, and envision their health and health care. Each woman was given a blank canvas to map her own personal health journey and to take home. We are rooted in ceremony. Our first gathering was in person, so all members of the tribe could meet each other and get to know each other before arriving at Springbrook to spend 4 days together. Each day was started with ceremony where eagles watched over us. This involves smudging, prayers, feasting together, nature medicines, connecting to the lands and waters, and sharing of our knowledges. As we connected with the lands and waters where the Kwantlen ancestors walked before us, memories of teachings flooded the women with blood memories. These are memories from generations before us that we carry until needed, and memories of teachings from their relatives. These knowledges were shared in our sharing circles and on the collective and personal canvases. Each day was closed with a closing circle and ceremony. From my family teachings, I learned that baskets are a very important part of our way of life. We use them to collect and carry water, our medicines, and foods. At our first opening at Springbrook, Elder Sheila blanketed the women to hold them safely through their retelling of their histories in healthcare. I was going to give the woman a handmade basket made by Elder Joan Ryan, a Shimshin weaver. With these baskets, we recognized and respected the very diverse teachings each tribe member may carry. As I was walking down a hallway, an ancestor spoke to me. I was told that this ceremony of gifting the baskets was not mine to do, that this was her journey. I was to witness this ceremony. What happened next was hard to put into words, as it's very emotional, spiritual, and heartfelt. To witness her reaction and the faces of the women upon receiving this gift was truly allyship, guided by our ancestors. This connected our tribe. Our responsibility is to build pathways so others can travel them. We indigenize our research from beginning to conclusion. We're using indigenizing rather than decolonizing research, as indigenizing is strength-based with the foundation of positivity. Our first collective canvas spoke to us of earth medicines. A wise woman shared, my culture with my medicine, natural medicine. I believe that this journey has been a lot more easier since I've been sticking to my beliefs. Another wise woman added, this is medicine in combination with burdock leaf for pain. And I guess that's another message for me to actually try it. Honoring our rooted family, traditional medicines, including herbs, teas, bear grease, devil's club, bear root, tobacco, lavender, and nettles, and so much more were used throughout our gathering. For the collective canvas, Earth Medicines, we asked our tribe, how do you use indigenous medicines and ceremony in your health and healing? Now we would like you to also take a moment to think about this question and how you would answer it. You can write it down for yourself, or you can share it with us in the chat box.
All right, we have a few responses coming in. Thank you all so much. So someone shares, not enough. They're on and off for using herbal remedies. Others use incense burning medicines regularly like sage and sweetgrass, using devil's club ointments, connecting with nature, using the nature to heal my mental health, hiking to connect with nature, and appreciating getting out on the land, moving their body and believing in a higher power, prayer, teas, water cleansing, smudging, walking, cedar, dance as ceremony. by using the tea medicine 4 times and then to return to Mother Earth, cold plunges, using sage. Wow, thank you all so much for sharing.
Thank you for your beautiful words. The wise women voices spoke. The canvas is now titled, It's a Journey, Earth Medicine Wheel. Why water? Honoring the Salish Sea, water is fluid, ever-changing, takes on many forms, and is lifeblood. Water is adaptable and can change a stone into sand. Water can hear you and has memory. And water will always balance itself, no matter where it is. For the collective canvas water wheel, we asked, how would you love to vision your healthcare? We invite you to take a moment to think about this question, and again, either write your answer or add it to the chat box. How would you love to vision your healthcare?
Beautiful. So we have people envisioning their healthcare as a partnership, as collaborative, holistic. Loving and caring, and wanting to learn more about ceremony and holistic. They vision their healthcare as being inclusive of their preferences, their wishes and priorities, being grounded in community connection and belonging, compassionate, and to be able to access Indigenous healing along with prayers and ceremonies, and building a relationship. Beautiful visions. Thank you all so much for sharing.
Thank you. And the wise women voices summed it up as my body knows a thing or two about a thing or two. Our next canvas explored bumps and falls in healthcare, and we used a waterfall as the visual. We asked, what bumps and falls did you experience in your healthcare? Again, join us, thinking about experiences you may have had, and if you're comfortable, add them to the chat box.
Thank you. This is a tough question, and we have some really thoughtful reflections coming in. So experiencing judgment from others, racism, lack of inattentive care or listening, being told what to do, rigid mindsets, not having their voice heard, lack of relational connection, feeling in the dark about their body, not believing them when they said something was wrong, stereotypical discrimination just by the way they look, being blamed for their health conditions, feeling excluded, only colonized services, racism, timeframes for appointments, not feeling heard when they've asked for what is the most helpful for them. Thank you all so much for sharing.
Thank you. And from bumps and falls, we heard and saw culture denied. After a waterfall calms, it goes into a reflection pool. And we asked, what supported you to get through these bumps and falls? I think you know what to do next. We invite you to also answer this question. Our women wrote their answers on canoes and then placed them on the canvas. So what supported you to get through these bumps and falls?
Thank you so much. Someone actually sent in a reflection right as you were speaking, Val, so I love the inspiration. Someone shared seeing relief on clients' faces when they see an Indigenous nurse, an indictment on healthcare. We also have family, friends, their own learnings, their husband, underlying education to know that they had options, drawing upon previous resilience, connection with others, interspecies relationships, animal-human bonds, their dogs, Love and support of family and friends equals community. Their sisters living with HIV and the allies that lift us up in a good way. First Nations Treatment Center, elders, First Nations staff, cultural healers, family, lots of connections with family and friends, and trust in the wisdom of their body. Nurses with positive, friendly outlooks when near them, active listening from the staff, family, advocacy, animals, knowing that they're working from their heart, seeing Indigenous students in health disciplines graduate, their own inner guide to pursue the teachings of their elders and ancestors, how they approach their challenges, family, community, spirituality, non-judgmental support groups, and listening to their body and advocating for themselves. Wow, thank you all so much for sharing.
Thank you. And from Reflection Pool, it now became titled Canoes of Reflection. And to note that we do have our paddles up. We had many teachings of the bear, which represents courage. The bear stands tall to remind us of the teachings of courage, to remember to listen to our heart, and it takes courage to do what is right. And after these teachings, we ask the question, think of a symbol that represents your inner strength. We invite you to think of your symbol. You can draw it on your paper, or you can write the word or words in the chat box.
All right, we already have some strong symbols coming in. Lion, water, whale, bear, eagle. And someone actually has a tattoo of a bear paw on their arm. Another whale, eagles and wise ones, female lion hunting, orca, bear, turtle. Grizzly bear, salmon. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for sharing. Oh, sorry, one more, old growth rainforest. Thank you all so much for sharing those powerful symbols of your inner strength.
Thank you. And from Bear Paw Strengths, we saw children of the bear tribe. Rivers of change. It takes courage to make change. And like the teachings of the sweetgrass told to me by my grandfather, we cannot do this alone. When you pull on a single strand of sweetgrass, it will break. When braided, it becomes strong. Each bundle of strands in the braid represents mind, body, and heart, and the knot is the spirit. You must use all three together in your daily living, or your life will not have balance. The last question we asked the women was to share a message to healthcare providers. You might want to think about what message you would like to share. For this canvas, I'm proud to share the voices of the Water Women Rising. I am woman, hear me roar. Allow us the peer support we need. I am not just a file number. We're important because we are important, and sometimes it feels like we are not. Stop denying care, and it goes for more than just people living with HIV. It goes for Indigenous people in general. I've known tons of people who have been denied care and who passed away, so that needs to stop. Respect culture, every culture that goes in there, not just the Indigenous. Respect the culture and their values and stop judging and assuming. While in our sharing circle, where the women were telling their histories of their bumps and falls in their healthcare, this, as you can imagine and maybe experience today, was very powerful. And yet we could all feel the hurt and anger. When all of a sudden four-leggeds came by the window, we all went to look and take pictures and watch them as they watched us. Nature had taken care of us. The energy shifted and the session went on with spirit-lifted hearts. And to know our elder Sheila was always with us, reading the room, caring for us, and holding us in ceremony. When we got back to the office, and before reading the tribe's words or looking at the collective canvases, we always started with ceremony. One day we were rushed. We started work with sacred items in the room, but without grounding ourselves in ceremony. We found no work could be done. Nothing would come to us. We even struggled with reading the words. We stopped, grounded ourselves, and held ceremony. We all felt the whole room change. It was so powerful. The energy hugged us, and then the words spoke to us. We indigenized the research language. Code book now became vessels that honor the voices. Themes are streams. Sub-themes or chapters we call creeks. Thematic analysis, we now call honoring voices. And knowledge translation exchange is now around the fire. Our third gathering was our heart-to-heart conversations. Each wise women met with the guiding team to do a check-in and take them back and reflect on their time at Springbrook. We asked how they had used or not used their personal canvases, and we spent time to make sure that we had gathered their histories on their personal and collective canvases and asked them in what ways they would like them to be used. We talked about how they would like to be involved in further gatherings around the fire. Their gift to us is that we can use their voices and their artwork in our future teachings, and they are bringing it back to community. A wise woman shared with us, I was fulfilled with knowledge and the feel of connection with the other ladies, learning what we were teaching and how easy it was to connect with what we were saying and talking about. Connecting with the ladies and still having connections with the majority of them today is still pretty amazing. We are the tide of change. This is the vessel that honors the women's voices. Traditional medicines and ways of knowing are healing. Health is connected with nature and is a circle. Protection, gifts, journey, blood memories, consequences of colonialism, teachings, community, two-eyed seeing, and a tug of war between Western and Indigenous ways. I would now like to turn it over to Angela, our river.
Thank you, Val. And thank you everybody for coming along this journey on this river along with us and having a little chance to do some of this interactive work together. On the slide here, you can see that we have presented a longer presentation of the process and methods, and we've made that available online. You can either click here from these slides or we can send that to you. And we've also started to share some of the preliminary results. And just as part of our learning and our process, we've taken these preliminary results back to the wise women who were part of this research in the first place, and to take it back to them to say, this is what we've learned. This is how we've tried to summarize what we learned across these gatherings. Is this a good reflection of your experiences and what you shared with us? So that was quite an incredible process of sharing what we're learning with the participants and the wise women themselves. And here's some links to some of the work and further descriptions of how that's done. But I do just want to take a few seconds here as somebody who practices allyship with Indigenous women and with Indigenous women living with HIV, and as a very traditionally quantitatively trained researcher. And Harlan has already put us on the block for the ways in which our methodologies have continued to create deficit-based approaches and create a standard or norm around what it should look like to be a person existing in this world, and how damaging that work has been. And so I think that just reflecting on how our process unfolded, and I think watching Valerie as a researcher, as somebody who's community oriented so thoroughly through her soul and being, has been genuinely revolutionary to me. I think watching a research process unfold where women's safety and well-being is so centered through every decision that's being made. It shouldn't be revolutionary, but it was. It came down to things like, do we have food options that are going to be acceptable and desirable by all of the women who are joining us on this journey? Is everybody going to be able to sleep comfortably? Are the home fires still supported and burning while we do this research? And so, you know, she showed this quick slide of all of these whiteboards. And I just need to share with everybody that Becky and I watched how Val's mind just basically like took over the walls of her office on these whiteboards. She started writing on like windows and like, you know, just how the pouring out of knowledge and wisdom into shaping this research process has been truly an honor and privilege for me to witness and to walk alongside on this journey. I will also say that we are engaged in a deep process of sharing what we're learning and the benefits of this arts-based indigenized research, not just for community, but for the research community as well, of how we can do strengths-based work better. And I'll say one final thing is that we do have some funding, and thank you to the BC Support Unit, that we are holding a Fraser community gathering. That's our 4th gathering of this process, to bring back our learnings to this community and the Fraser Health community as well, to say, this is what we're learning. This is what wise women are telling us about how they're experiencing and how they want to experience their health and healthcare. And what is it that we can do collectively to realize that vision? So that work is going to happen in September, October of this year. Of course, like everything, timelines are so hard right now, but that's our vision. And if that is something that you would like to participate in alongside us, please be in touch. We would love to have you there and to continue this conversation and work alongside you. So thank you, and thank you for allowing us to share our journey and to do this work together to change the tide. So Becky, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Val and Angela, for those beautiful words and reflections in that beautiful presentation. And thank you all again for, as Angela mentioned, being so willing to participate in this very interactive presentation. I want to recognize that it does take courage to reflect on these questions and to share so openly. So I really just wanted to recognize that and thank you all. I always learn so much when we present. So please feel free to, we have a few minutes for questions. So please feel free to write any questions in the chat. Or if you have the ability to raise your hand and you want to ask your question verbally, please feel free to do that yourself or to do so. I'll start. There's been a few reflections about the really stunning and beautiful photographs and imagery that's been used throughout the presentation. So thank you, Angela, for noting that all of these photos were taken by Valerie. And so maybe we can start off with some reflections. Val, especially as you mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, how important it was for you to use imagery, to sit with imagery, and to let the imagery guide you. So I just wonder if you had any thoughts there.
Thank you, Becky. And I see someone has raised their hand, so I'll make this really quick. When you talked about the whiteboards and everything flooding through me, it came from my ancestors. It all came through me, the work that we did. And I just went back to our old ways of just opening my eyes. I think using, I've used it before, looking through my eyes in the view of a child, how a child would look at nature, and going back to our old ways, because they're so not conditioned yet. I don't like that word, but they see everything so openly and honestly. And that is just the way I just looked at this. I let the ancestors guide me through this work, and I honor them for the work that we did today. And I think it was Danielle that had her hand raised.
I had to unmute. you would think I'd never used Zoom before. Angela and Valerie, that was a beautiful presentation, both visually and just the words that you shared. So thank you so much for that. Valerie, I appreciated how you talked about that experience of the women learning from each other, as well as learning about the process. And my question as a result is actually for you, Angela, because you reflected on your experience being a quantitative researcher. So coming into this, were there things that you had not experienced before that have changed your way or thinking about how you will do research differently, perhaps in the future?
Danielle, thanks for this great question. You can see Val laughing at me and like kind of smirking at me. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the entire process of engaging in this research has really fundamentally changed how I do all of my research. So I'm still a quantitative researcher, but I think I've become so desperately conscious, maybe even self-conscious of the ways that the way we do research perpetuates inequities and social injustices, and the ways in which we can be very extractive of community hurt and pain, in a way that I think what I've been learning through this process is this is sort of obvious, but it's not necessary. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes when you do your research, you're like, you're doing research to understand the truth, right? And hopefully to do transformative work. But to do that, we do not need to reactivate or harm or extract or create more structural violence in our processes. And there's a deep reflection on my part that's not over by any means. It's so ongoing of the big and small ways that can be done. And even the examples that Harlan was giving earlier, where he showed his survey questions, right? It's like, this is how we asked it. And then we analyzed it and we realized, oh my gosh, we're asking this in a way that's not giving us an opportunity to really understand what we're trying to answer here. And that's been my process as well. We have a lot of questions in quantitative research that can be so harmful to participants that we don't necessarily think twice about. Even the question of like, how many children do you have? I mean, I've used that question a million times. And until I started to do this work with Val and others to say that question can really be so activating to women. And if you don't understand that, you have no business asking that question. So Danielle, I mean, I think it's fundamentally, completely transformed how I see my own work. I make mistakes. I will continue to make mistakes. And in the generosity of this space, I think I can continue to grow and learn. But certainly being part of this has transformed how I see our research. Thank you so much for that question.
And thank you, Angela. And I would like to add to that. I just found out from Angela a few weeks ago that I scared her with this work, which kind of hit me like I didn't realize. And just to be transparent, I have no letters behind my name, no academia. I've learned from and with the land and just bringing ancestral knowledge. So I really do raise my hands up to our beautiful team, and for Angela taking a chance and challenging her book learning to do it in land, with the land and on the land. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We still have a few more questions, but I know that we're over time already. So I'll put my email in the chat box, and if apologies to anyone whose question we didn't get to, but we would love to answer it. So please do get in touch with us. And I'd like to pass it over to Val to close us.
And we can always answer them in the breaks too. Thank you. I would, this picture was taken by Angela of Becky and myself at the end of our second gathering. We set up the room with all the canvases. So when the women came in the morning, this is what they saw. And we had our tribe's closing circle. So in the chat box, we invite you to share with us one word that describes taking this journey. And I'll just let the words go through. as I heard we were at time, and Becky maybe can reflect on them. I'll just put this slide up as those words come on the chat box. These are our contacts. Becky will probably put them in the chat box. And if you'd like a copy of any of the presentations mentioned, Angela offered to send them out through Becky, I'm sure. And we would love to talk to you more about this journey.